I think my earliest memory was being pushed in a pram along the towpath by the Thames when I must have been very young, and we lived at Staines, which my father moved to during the war. And I think the house has been pulled down now, although the street we lived in has been given his name. So his name was Richard Stinker Murdoch. He was quite a famous comedian at the time. And the place is now called Murdoch Close, although the house doesn't exist anymore. Just a lot of little new build houses. I went there years later to try and see if I could get some sort of feeling of what it must have been like to have been born around that time. And instead of actually feeling what my life was about, I had a sort of mystical feeling of how wonderful it was to be born, and the joy of that coming into a physical body. And so it was a sort of very unexpected meeting, which I haven't repeated very often since. One doesn't with these sort of experiences, but I think I expected information, whereas actually what I got was inspiration. There's a photo here of my mum and dad at a premiere with Kenneth Horne and his wife Marjorie. And my father and Kenneth were great pals in the Air Force. Kenneth Horne had never done anything in show business at the time. My father was already a bit of a star in the West End. But they started writing radio scripts together when they worked in the Air Ministry. And they were a wonderful team, which eventually got broken up because I think the BBC were jealous of how well they got on, and took Kenneth off to start his own show. But after that he never wrote any of his own material. He only was seemingly able to write when he was with my father and they were bantering and chatting in the RAC club or wherever they did it. And he died very young, Kenneth. He was only 63. He had some problem with his blood and he was not given blood thinning, and he died making a speech at the Grosvenor House. Very sad. And we were going to his funeral. My father and my sisters and me, we got into a taxi to go to Kenneth's funeral. The taxi driver turned around, he saw my father, he recognised his face, and he said, "Sad about old Murdoch, wasn't it?" And my father had to gently correct him and say, well, actually he was Murdoch and it was Horne who'd actually popped his clogs. But that was quite amusing, yeah.
Another photo.
Okay. Oh, right. Well, you might like this one because it's me and my sister talking to my father who's in drag, whereas actually what he's doing is playing Queen Hysteria at the London Hippodrome. He loved to do the Dame in pantomime, and he had many gags. What he liked most about it really was that he could write all his own material. He didn't have to cough up somebody else's ideas. So that's that. There's another picture that's Michael Benteen, Jimmy Edwards and my dad. And that's the car, which was a 1938 Rolls-Royce, blue and black. It had no independent suspension, so it's very bumpy. But here my sisters and me, we're supposed to be washing it, but it's a sort of set-up job by the press to make us look very domestically orientated, and with the house in the background. And my father's polishing the angel on the front. He got that car one day when we went to a restaurant on a motorway, or what was then probably not a motorway, it was probably just the A2 going up, or the A12 going up to Norfolk. And we stopped at a cafe, and as a man my father was then driving a Humber Super Snipe, and he didn't like it very much. It was a new car, and he found the steering very heavy. And he was speaking to a guy in the next partition who was driving this 1938 Rolls Royce. And they admired each other's cars and decided there and then to swap cars. So we actually drove off in this Rolls, and he drove off in my father's Humber Snipe, which I'm sure they didn't sort out the insurance till later, but in those days perhaps people didn't worry so much about that. Anyhow.